In 1938, history changed forever when German nuclear physicist Otto Hahn, Fritz Strassman, and Lise Meitner discovered nuclear fission in a lab in Berlin. They discovered that an atom splitting into lighter atoms caused a powerful blast. This was groundbreaking. Humans discovered a new way to power technology, but at the same time, they opened the door for nuclear horrors. Atomic bombs, specifically. Welcome back to Most Amazing Top 10. I'm your host, Taylor McWatters, and for this list, we'll be taking a look at relics from our dark past. Here are the top 10 darkest things found in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Kicking off the list at number 10, iron shutters. On August 6th, the Enola Gay bomber dropped a 9,000-pound uranium bomb over Hiroshima, wiping out everyone and everything miles away. And then just 3 days later, on August 9th, the Fat Man bomb was dropped over Nagasaki, also destroying over 3 square miles. 50% of the damage was done from the initial blast, 35% was due to extreme heat, 5% initial radiation, and 10% residual radiation. So on top of 80,000 souls being taken, tens of thousands more would soon pass on due to radiation exposure. The blast alone was able to bend these iron window shutters backwards. They were initially attached to the Hiroshima Army Clothing Department, and today, like other relics on this list, they're on display at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum. Number 9. Shirley Temple doll. This doll was donated to that same museum. It was given directly from the owner of the Shirley Temple doll herself, Chiko Suitomo. Her father got her the doll when he was in the United States, but when they returned to their home after the bombing, the doll was surprisingly still in great condition, all things considered. The doll's peach-colored clothing were cooked and the whole doll just looks haunting now, but she still loves it regardless of the horrors that happened. Chiko kept the doll with her post-war until eventually donating it to that same museum. Number 8. Wooden sandal. Donated by Tomiko Ino back in 1963, this sandal once belonged to a young girl named Miyoko. She was a student at the First Municipal Girls High School. After months of missing, the only thing her mother was able to find that belonged to the young Miyoko was a wooden sandal that she'd recognized. She'd recognized the sandal because she herself made the straps out of materials from her kimono. The footprint of Miyoko still remains on the sandal. Number 7. A lunchbox. This lunchbox was donated from Suinaro Kano back in 2011. The donor's younger brother at the time of the A-bomb was a mechanical engineering student. Now during his demolition work, the bomb went off and Koji was exposed to the blast. His father, Takeshi, looked everywhere for Koji after this. He left from their home in Kurahashi town, grabbed a boat, and then continued looking for days and days, weeks and weeks. Time went on and he was fearing the worst, and to this day he was sadly never found. But after a while, Takeshi received Koji's gaiters and lunchbox. Now the gaiters were left at Koji's grave, but his lunchbox still remains. This story is tragic and touching, but knowing that Koji's name is still written on that lunchbox today serves as a gentle but harsh reminder on the impact of warfare. Number 6. Melted coins. Right after the detonation over Hiroshima, the blast created an enormous amount of heat. The heat generated was near 4,000 degrees Celsius. Now the surrounding buildings within 1 kilometer were just completely destroyed. The blast created shockwaves that were faster than the speed of sound. It was hot enough also to melt coins. Now these coins were exposed to the blast and now they're warped and they're darkened. They look medieval almost. That's how much damage that the bomb did. These coins were eventually passed down and given to an anonymous donor, and if you want to see them in person, they too remain at that same museum. Now just over a year ago, other coins were sold for $1,000. These coins were also warped and fused together from the 15 kiloton atomic bomb little boy. There's even a stack of 6 coins that melted together. Now a week after the bombing, Kinzo Imura discovered this pile of coins melted together in the ruins of a family member's house. Number 5. A belt buckle. This next relic was donated by Shiro Shinoda back in 2015. Shiro was still quite young during the Hiroshima bombing. He was just in junior high at the time, and while working at a factory, he turned his face to his machine, and then all of a sudden everything just went white, and then everything went completely black. He made his way through the rubble after he woke up, passing other victims, and buildings were just completely wiped out. Just a horrible sight all in all. Now after spending the night completely alone, he reunited with his sister Kyoko, and this belt buckle was worn by Shiro, and to this day, this bomb artifact serves as a symbol of hope. Number 4. Leather gaiters, and military sword. These belongings were donated back in 2011. They're from a man named Toji Matsui, who at the time of the first bombing was 23 years old. His wife donated his leather gaiters and a military sword that once belonged to the young man. He was an apprentice officer assigned to the Ship Communications Reserve, and that A-bomb that hit, he was in the Minami Elementary schoolyard. He was blasted 10 meters back, where he then experienced this intense heat. He said it felt like he had been dipped in gasoline and then lit on fire. I couldn't even imagine that pain. Now when he woke up, the left side of his face was burned badly, his skin was purple at this point, and he could barely open his left eye due to this massive blister. He had with him these belongings, and it's horrible because he was put right to work after the blast. He was one that was responsible for moving the bodies of the victims out of the rubble. Number 3. glass. As we heard from number 10 on this list, the blast alone caused incredible amounts of damage. All that debris, rock, stone, glass, just whirling through the air had to sadly end up somewhere. Now this shard of glass here was once stuck inside the chin of Shigeto Shinko, the donor's brother-in-law. Now when the bomb hit, he was in his home and the windows shattered, causing numerous pieces of glass to get stuck in his skin. He was able to pull some of them out himself, which I can't even imagine that pain, and then his wife Fuji had to pull this large piece out from his chin. Number 2. A briefcase. Some were inside when the initial blast took place. Window shutters were bent back, glass flew through the air at high speeds, but those outside were directly exposed. Like Tadayora Hikara, for example, who at the time was riding his bicycle over a bridge. His suitcase was mounted behind his seat and the blast threw Tadayori down to the ground, and his arms and his back were horribly burnt. The suitcase behind him of course took damage, so just looking at that, we can't even imagine the pain that his skin endured. Kihara did survive for 22 more years after the bombing, keeping the suitcase safe as a tragic reminder of his history. And finally, number 1, Trinitite. July 16th, 1945, the Trinity test was conducted. The Trinity test was the first atomic bomb that was detonated in a New Mexico desert. It was deemed a success with mushroom clouds reaching up to 40,000 feet high. Theoretical physicist Robert Oppenheimer, who named the project, codenamed Trinity, was a participant in the Manhattan Project, where he oversaw the construction of 4 atomic bombs. The first test was done in the White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico, and after the bomb was first detonated, the surrounding area was turned green. This was called Trinitite. Trinitite, also referred to as Alamogordo glass, was this new radioactive material. The fission bomb was filled with plutonium and uranium, so when you burn everything up that fast, the sand melts, creating this green radioactive glass. Now most of this glass that exists was found far away from the blast site. That's because it was so hot that it rained down still in liquid form. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Those were just 10 of the darkest things found at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And with this list taking on a serious note, I did want to end it with a quote. This quote comes from the words of Nagasaki survivor Yasuhiro Tanaka, who experienced the blast firsthand when he was just 3 years old. The 75-year-old survivor says, "You are only given one life, so cherish this day. Be kind to others and be kind to yourself." I've been your host, Taylor McWatters, and we'll see you next time on Most Amazing Top 10.